Welcome back to the Deeply Rested podcast. I have a question for you. Do you know how much money you need to be happy? If you don't know the answer, today's conversation is for you. Defining what is enough is crucial if you want to create a sustainable business, but figuring out how much is enough is tricky to do. My dear friend Linzy Bonham is here to help us define what is enough so that we can use our businesses to fund truly joyful lives without burning out. Linzy is a private practice therapist turned money coach who helps private practice owners and health professionals feel calm and in control of their finances. She does this through her coaching at Money Nuts and Bolts and on her podcast, Money Skills for Therapists. Linzy and I originally recorded this conversation for my fundraising event, the Rest and Success Code, and I can't wait to share it with you again today. I hope you enjoy this empowering conversation about money with the one and only Linzy Bonham. Welcome to Deeply Rested, the podcast that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. I'm your host, retired therapist and disillusioned business coach, Megan Megginson. I'm on a mission to help people like you unlearn the rules that keep you trapped in self-doubt so that you can recover from burnout and finally become deeply rested. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and join our weekly newsletter at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. Now, it's time for the show. I'm your host, Megan Megginson, and I'm on a mission to help small business owners become deeply rested and wildly successful. Today, we're delving into a thought-provoking topic at the heart of every business owner's journey, the enough equation. How much money do you need to be truly happy, and how can you define what enough means for you? I couldn't think of a better person to guide this conversation than my dear friend, Linzy Bonham. Linzy is a private practice therapist turned money coach who helps private practice owners and health professionals feel calm and in control of their finances. This is a really special conversation, and I hope that you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed having it. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back.
For those of you who don't know me or Linzy, we're business besties, have been for many years now.
Mm-hmm.
We spend most of our friendship talking about very philosophical things.
We do.
We can be a serious little duo, but all in service of discovering happiness. I don't know. But a conversation that Linzy and I have been having a lot lately is about enough. Like, what is enough? So, Linz, as you know, I work with small business owners who want to become deeply rested and wildly successful. Business owners want to understand how to create really sustainable and healthy businesses.
Yes.
I have certainly discovered in my years of doing this work that you cannot be deeply rested and wildly successful until you define what is enough for you in your life.
Yes.
What's enough money? What is enough fame? What's enough success? What's a big enough house? What's enough money in the bank? If you don't know what's enough, you will just keep on climbing that ladder to nowhere.
Yeah.
Will just spend your life stuck in burnout. So it's so crucial that we all know individually what is enough for us. This is why I'm bringing you in today. Defining what is enough on paper is actually really hard to do.
Yes.
Like it's really hard to name and list what is enough. How do I know what's enough for me? So today we're going to do a deep dive into how to define what is enough, especially financially, since you are, of course, a money expert. So I have a bunch of questions I want to ask you. But first, just any thoughts or reflections from you on this big topic of what is enough?
Yeah, I think it's a question that you hit at a certain point when you've surpassed the milestones that you thought were going to be enough. I think this is when this question comes in. So for some folks who are watching, like if people are at the beginning of their business, Like if you're, still building and you're getting paid like 25, 30 grand a year, that's not enough, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not all philosophical, right? And I think this is where with money, there can often be this like divide in the way that we, the financial world, the way that financial influencers, coaches, like educators talk about money. Either there's the people who are all about like the numbers, right? And like the strategies and the systems, or there's the people who are like totally in the emotions and the woo and the manifesting and the feelings. And there's always like a combination of both, right? So like I always want to ground in the material reality that money is not just emotional. Money is not just about our relationship to it, even though we're going to talk about our relationship to it quite a lot today. You do need money to pay your mortgage. You do need money to feed your kids and to send them to school. And you do need money to pay for healthcare and be well. So there's a material reality there that's our starting point, that you do need to make a certain amount of money to actually be okay in this world and to be able to like trade that money for the things you need to be a healthy human in the world. But what we see, in our own experiences and then in the folks that we support who have figured out how to do that and how to make money, you get to this point where you tell yourself, oh, when I get paid $100,000 a year, everything's going to be great. I'm going to have made it. And then you get there and you're like, well, 125 would be nice, right? That's where we start to get into the never ending more. And that's really when enoughness starts to become a deeper, more important, like philosophical question.
Yes.
Yes. But there are people who literally don't have enough. So if you know that you're making 40 grand a year and you're like struggling to pay your bills, you don't have enough. This conversation will still be, I think, interesting and informative, but there is material reality to attend to. And then after that, we start to get into these more kind of privileged questions and conversations really around satisfaction.
Yeah, because when we don't have enough, we literally are not safe. Right?
True. Absolutely.
Insecurity, housing insecurity. And our bodies know when we're not safe.
Yes.
Right? But when we're not secure, the first order of business is to figure out what you need to do to be financially secure.
Yes.
When we are resting on a bed of financial security, then we're exploring the more privileged questions around, is enough? I really appreciate you making that distinction. And if we can just add even a tiny bit of nuance there, a conversation I have a lot with my clients is, do you understand the difference between real scarcity and perceived scarcity?
Absolutely.
So there's a difference between, I don't have enough money to pay my rent of like middle of the road apartment in a part of town I don't love. And I don't have enough money to live in the luxury apartment in downtown San Francisco. So just like as for our listeners, as you're listening to this conversation today, I think it requires bringing a really honest assessment of the decisions that you've made in your life, the amount of security that you do or do not have in your life right now. Like really just sitting with your own mix of variables and taking the things Linzy and I are going to talk about and putting them through your own unique lens. Am I secure? Am I making choices that really align with my values? Am I paving a future for me and my business that really continues to help me feel secure and to really live into my values? These are like really massive conversations, and we just want to like plant seeds for you right here at the beginning to really get the most out of the questions we're going to move through today. Fair to say, Linz?
Sounds great. Agree.
It's so great when you're talking to your friend, right? We're just like, we just agree with everything the other person. Not going to be a lot of conflict in this conversation today, folks.
Probably not, but lots of depth.
Lots of depth, not much conflict. You can submit your questions and pushback to us after listening. Okay, so let's dive in. I think a really logical place to start is with the struggle, right? In your opinion, why do we struggle so much with what is enough, specifically when it comes to money in the bank?
So there's a few pieces to this. And the first one is really about a financial literacy and knowledge and knowing your numbers, right? So the very first thing is thinking about for yourself, what actually is enough, and looking at your numbers to look at like, what do you need to, pay the rent or pay the mortgage on the house that is safe and secure and like takes care of your needs, right? What do you need to be putting away for your child so that you have financial stability in the future, right? So like you don't go into a bunch of debt, or they don't go into a bunch of debt in order to get the education that they're going to need to do the work they want to do. There's real numbers associated with that. And taking time to do with your real numbers is hard. And when you have a kind of a strange or difficult relationship with money, or a lot of overwhelm around money, this is a big step. But like there are real numbers for you. There's real numbers for you given your lifestyle, where you live, what you need, like the medical situation of your family. All of these things come together to help you look at a real number that would be okay, to be real. If, I was bringing in $90,000 a year, that would be enough. I could cover our rent. We could pay the groceries that we want to buy. And as you said, like already there's some nuance here, right? Because it's like, what do you actually need? And we're going to talk a little bit more, hopefully about this down, in our conversation. But what do you actually need? But it's like being grounded. If you think about on your most grounded days, where you're like living your values and you're feeling gratitude, what do you actually need on those days to be safe and okay and secure and taken care of? And there's a real number there that once you know that number, now you actually have a number that you can work towards, or maybe even see, oh, I'm already at that number. There's a real number there that's going to tell you what financially is enough for you, given your situation.
We're going to talk in a minute about how we figure out what that number actually is. It's so helpful to hear you say so logically, as you do as a money skills expert, that like these are hard numbers. This isn't emotional. This isn't a gut. This is really like looking at your expenses, looking at what it costs to live your life. Can you name the baseline number? I need this much money in the bank to be secure.
Yes.
It's interesting. This is a small tangent, but I feel like we get so confused by all of the messaging, especially online, about abundance. And we are not here. You and I are not here to squash abundance. Like we are not. People need to live smaller lives. But when you are so swept up in the world of like manifesting abundance on the internet, and like you deserve to be a millionaire, and we should all be millionaires, and it kind of pulls us into this place where we don't even know how to name. Sure, I would love to be a millionaire, and I'm not opposed to like manifesting that and making that come true in my life. But I don't actually even know how to name what is enough today.
Yes.
Because like that's whatever that abundance is. It's not here now. I just feel like it sets us up for the when-then scenario.
Yes.
Like when I have this much money, then I'll. And I hope that part of what we can help people do today with this conversation is really learn how to just be happy right now with what you have, to feel safe right now with what you have. And then you can play with manifesting abundance from this of grounded security.
Absolutely. Because there's a difference between like, I'm really feel secure. I've built stability in my life now. I feel gratitude for what I have. Like, those are conversations that, especially around the time that I had my son, I was full of oxytocin. Really recommend it as a drug if you're able to. If you decide to have a baby, I wish much oxytocin upon you, which is like, this like love drug that your body produces. And at that time, I remember having so many conversations with my partner about how grateful we are for what we have, right? Like just this deep gratitude for like this, 1,200 square foot house that we have, that's like humble and cute and safe and in a nice part of town that lets us walk to where we want to be, and like having family and support around us, like gratitude for what you have, and like that grounding and like, wow, I have this amazing life, then allows like that, like, oh, but could I be a millionaire? To be like a fun project.
Right.
How do I, It's not a need, right? Like we shouldn't need to be objectively wealthy in order to be okay, right? Or to feel good enough or to feel safe, right? That's, and I think with the abundance script, there is this like putting happiness off on the horizon.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah. But if you hustle in your business and if you make 2 million so you can pay yourself 1 million, then you're going to be happy. Then you're going to feel safe. Then you're going to feel good enough. And that is actually just not true, right? We're just kind of kicking that work down the road for our future self. And we're focusing on something that can't actually be solved by money. Because at that point, we're starting to talk about like extra.
Right.
And we don't need extra to be happy or okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need extra to be happy or okay. This is so important. If you know what's enough and you feel secure and you're living within limits, because I think that's another thing about abundance is let's think that life can be like limitless.
No limits. Yes.
That's a lie.
And we know too, as former therapists, that boundaries are good. Boundaries are good. Limits are good. Right. And so that's also something to, just be a little bit cautious and suspicious of, like, why do we not need limits?
Right.
Right. What is that fantasy about? And then if you think about when in your times in your life where you haven't had limits, how has that gone? And how has that actually felt at the end of the day? Yeah. Like limits are important. They help us, discern what is important. They help us make sure we're actually taking care of ourselves and who we are. I'm a fan of boundaries and limits.
Me too, especially when it comes to what is enough helping you, especially. So let's talk about how we can actually figure out what is enough financially. Some advice about how to begin to calculate that on paper.
Yes. Well, I mean, one of the biggest things that folks don't tend to know is what do you actually need in your household budget today with things as they are today, with like the normal grocery shops that you're already doing, with the clothes that your kids are going to need, with the repairs that need to be done on your home or your apartment. How much is it actually costing you to live today? And starting with that as a number, right? Because when you start there, you can see, okay, based on my life just as it is, if nothing changed, I need as a starting place $3,500 a month. When you say, if you're in a dual income household, when you pool your money with your partner's money, that's how much you need to be bringing in to take care of your life. Like that gives you a base. And then from there, you can think about, okay, what am I not taking care of right now? Maybe about the future, right? Or maybe what are some things that really would add a lot to my life that I could add in that would have huge impact without me having to make double the money, right? So I think often we think about rest and vacation. And again, I think in that limitless fantasy, it's like you can go on endless vacations. You can go to the most beautiful places. But if you're grounded and you're thinking about your life now and who you are and how much information you can take in, I'm saying this as a highly sensitive person who like less is more for me. Would one trip a year really like add a lot to your life? If you could plan one trip a year that's like really where you want to go, you can stay longer than you would want to. What does that mean? Like thinking about what would make life satisfying, meaningful. Again, thinking from your grounded place, right? Like in parts work, there's, the core, like the center self, the core self, and like thinking of your core self when you really are connected to your best self and what actually makes life better. What are some things that could be added to life that would just make it like, yes, that is what we need to ask these questions from that grounded place. There's always going to be parts of you that are like doing all sorts of other things, striving, comparing. Those parts are not really the parts you should bring to the table here. It's like tapping into your wisdom. Does going to like the theater really do it for you? And how many times could you actually take in the theater in a year? Is it like twice a year you want to go to a really good show? Maybe you put that into the budget too. But it's really being real about like, what is the amount of something that really adds value before you get into diminishing returns territory. So diminishing returns is where we continue to spend money, but we don't actually get the same value that we did from the first hit, right? So when you go out for a really nice dinner and you haven't been out for a really nice dinner in 6 months, that dinner is going to be like, wow, that was such a nice dinner. Oh my God, your chicken was so good. It was perfectly done. I wish I could make that risotto at home. Like it's so impactful. If you start going out for a really nice dinner every week, it just starts becoming dinner. It's not so special anymore, right? So it's like thinking about yourself. How can dollars have impact for you? Add those things into your budget, but be honest with yourself of like, one trip a year is good, but remember last year when we took like 3 trips and we actually felt like tired and it was too much? Maybe we don't need 3 trips. Maybe we do 1. Maybe we do 2. Having those grounded conversations with yourself, and if you're making financial decisions with somebody else, with your partner, can help you start to get really clear on like what makes a difference for you financially and what doesn't. Because a lot of things that we think we want to spend money on, especially when we're in that abundance mindset, don't actually make an impact on our quality of life at the end of the day.
How can dollars have impact?
Yes.
That's really good.
No $2 have the same impact, right? And so really thinking about how can you get the most out of the money that you're spending makes the power of that money go so much further.
Right. And you hinted at this a few moments ago. When we're looking at the dollars in the bank, we also have to think about how much of my time and life force energy is to go into making those dollars.
Yes.
Like there's a relationship here between, as business owners, our energetic output and our financial input. Like that there's a cost benefit analysis, maybe is the way to think about it.
Yes.
If you might look at your bank account and be like, wow, like it would be so great. I'm just going to say something totally off the wall. It would be so amazing to like be able to pay myself $50,000 a month. Like that would be such a luxurious amount of money I could have. I could just do anything that I wanted. So then as the work that I do, I would say, okay, great. How much of your time and energy will you have to give to your business in order to pay yourself $50,000 a month? Oh yeah, I guess I'll have to work like 80-hour work weeks. You know, I'm like really and like hustle and grind. Okay. Does that exchange feel worth it to you? And I think that is such a personal question that people have to really sit with. And then we start this like negotiation between how much energy am I willing to give and how much money can I realistically pay myself? Can I like bring into my bank account if I give that much money to my business? And I just think that like sitting with that question of how much time and energy am I willing to give and how much money can I realistically generate with that time and energy, it's like the next layer of this conversation that you don't start setting enough goals that actually are not in alignment with your energetic capacity. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. And, you know, the other layer that I think about when I think of that, Meg, is when you are exhausted, money doesn't have the same positive impact.
Right.
Like burnout is the thief of joy. And if you have a bunch of money in the bank because you've been hustling super, super hard, and then like, let's use that going out for dinner example. You go out for dinner with your partner because you're like, we've got money now. We should go to that really nice restaurant we went to, you know, when we first got married. You go out for dinner, you're exhausted. Maybe you and your partner have some tension because you haven't been around and, you know, they're not feeling very like cared for or tended to. And you're eating this dinner, but you're really tired. You kind of rather be home on the couch and you haven't like really been present in your life and you're still not really present in your life. That meal is not going to taste as good. Like overworking blunts our life. Exhaustion blunts your life. And I think we get confused about what is really going to make life better. And we think that numbers in the bank make life better. And they don't. And actually, when we're really tired, those numbers in the bank are much less impactful than they would be if we actually were present and grounded.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. You have to negotiate that within yourself.
Yes.
Energy, money. What kind of exchange am I willing to make? You shared a metaphor with me recently. So good. Do you remember the one I'm talking about? Yeah. Can you tell that story?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I have friends in my life who are like into real estate, and we talk a lot about money and the meaning of money. And a young friend of mine who's like super bright, super smart. He's only in his late 20s, and he managed to save enough money to buy a sixplex on his own, like a rental building, which is like pretty mind blowing. Like on the surface, you're like, that's wow, holy crap. And it is an impressive accomplishment, but we were chatting about it, and the friend shared with me at the time that he was working to make that money, he was in a relationship, which was like his first significant relationship in his life, with somebody who he really loved a lot. And that relationship did not last. And he commented that looking back, he realizes like working so hard to make that money, like having that project being about earning that money, if he had realized that he was going to miss this window of this partnership with this person, first of all, he wouldn't have done it, right? That was more important. But he also shared that working that hard, sacrificing so much to create this like, big chunk of money that he used to turn into this asset, like it's kind of like giving up an organ, like it's just gone. That part of your life is just gone. And you got return for it, and he's going to continue to get financial value out of that return, but you can never get that back, right? You can't get back the time and the energy that you sacrificed wholly in order to get this money, right? And I thought that was like such an apt metaphor of like, yeah, it's like selling an organ. You sell it, you get a bunch of money, you get like $20,000 for your kidney or whatever. You're never getting your kidney back, right? You can't reclaim it. And I thought that was just like such a beautiful reflection, and like there's just so many questions there about how much is time worth, how much is connection worth, how much is relationship worth, compared to being able to make a bunch of money, but you can't go back in time, you can't get it back.
It is such a powerful story.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I hear you share it, it just gives me chills.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get that time back. You can't get that energy back. But most importantly, you can't get those moments in relationship back.
No.
And we have to be honest with ourselves as business owners that when we are giving so much of ourselves to our business, we are giving less to the other relationships in our life. It's the therapist in me. Like I often think about my relationship with my business as like an intimate relationship, my business relationship. And the more energy I give to that relationship, the less energy I have to give to my actual intimate partner relationship, to friendships, to children, to your children. One, we have to understand the basic amount of money we need to live a safe and secure life. And you've given some really excellent suggestions about how you can begin to calculate that number for yourself. That is a hard number on paper in your spreadsheet. Like you have to make that amount of money to have material safety in this world. And then two, we start to think about emotionally, energetically, and relationally, what is the baseline that I need to be contributing to my life to feel really satisfied and really happy with the life that I am living right here, right now in this moment? Am I tending to my relationships in the ways that I want to, including the relationship with myself? Am I tending to myself in the ways that I want to? And if you choose to hyper-focus on your business to grow, that's fine. As long as you're honest with yourself that that is a choice you're making. You are choosing to sell your kidney. It's totally a valid, no judgment, but be honest about the consequences of selling your kidney, that when you get where it is you're trying to go, there will be consequences in your relationship with others, with yourself, that you're going to have to face. And that can be really uncomfortable to sit with, but reality.
And I think there's a whole other component here, which is like, why?
Okay.
Right? So there are some people who are very financially strategic. And for somebody like that, they might have a clear answer where it's like, well, here's the thing. When I get my business up to $1 million of revenue, I'm going to be making $500,000. I'm going to be investing $100,000 of that every year. At this point, I can retire at 42 years old. That's like a strategy. Most folks, Meg, in our world don't function like that. We don't tend to like support folks like that. There's not a lot of people like that in like the helping, healing, therapy space. That's not usually how we're built. And so what I tend to see more is that folks tend to set lofty goals for their business because they think that it's going to give them a certain felt experience, right? It's like, when I have lots of money, then I'm going to feel like I've made it, or then I'm going to feel safe. If I just had $20,000 in the bank at all times, I would feel safe. Then I wouldn't worry about money more, or then I would feel worthy, right? Like I'd feel good enough. I'd see that like I was successful. And often what I see is like when folks have big financial goals, there are emotional problems that we are trying to solve with money. We don't actually have a specific financial puzzle we're trying to solve. If you do, that's great. If you got a plan to pay down your mortgage in like 10 years because you have a specific plan of what you're doing after that, I'm all for it. But often we're we're using the wrong tool to try to solve a problem that's actually not a money problem.
Yeah, that's really big, Linz. I'm sure we all have something like that we carry around inside of us, like some wound or some problem that we're trying to heal or solve with more money. And it almost never works that way. Man, we could just talk about this for hours and hours, but maybe for now we can just leave it at this, like be curious about the stories that you are telling yourself about money. Assuming you're in a place where your basic needs are met and you are secure in this material world, get really curious about the impulses and the drives that are pushing you towards this never-ending more, always feeling like, okay, I hit 6 figures. Now I got to hit 7 figures, or whatever the narrative is, question it. Who made it? Who told you that's going to solve a problem? What problem or wound do you think that's going to solve or heal? Really question everything about it, because at the end of the day, like, we do live in an exploitative, capitalistic society, and we're all carrying around internalized conditioning about our value and our worthiness being attached to how much we have and how much we earn. And the invitation is, if you want to be deeply rested and wildly successful as a business owner, you have to really deprogram yourself from that automatic way of thinking. And that's big work. It's hard work to do.
Yeah, you're swimming against the current.
Yeah.
Right. Capitalism tells us that endless growth is success. And we know that is not actually sustainable, and it's not actually going to get you what you want. So it's a big deal to stop and set a point of like, what is enough, and let yourself be curious about what is enough, and then let yourself actually settle into enoughness once those material needs are hit, and only kind of like play with growth if you're curious or it's fun. But don't think that it's going to solve all these other problems.
Right. That's perfect. If it's curious, if it's fun, and if there's ease. And clear, ease doesn't mean there's no hard work. Like, there's work involved. No matter what you do, there's work involved. But I certainly experience in my own business that when I am really resting in enough, then like my creativity can really come out and play. And the work that I do and the projects that I do, I start feeling fun and playful. And there isn't ease about the way that they come together and the way that they flow. And I guess, like, surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, I don't know, money does start flowing a little more easily when we're attached to outcome, when we're not like holding on for dear life because we think if this doesn't work or this isn't successful, failure, or I'm not going to be safe. It's beautiful what happens when you know what enough is. You feel safe in your life, and you can release expectation and just really start operating from a more curious and playful place. That's so sweet, isn't it?
It is. And I think that for me is like that's the arrival place.
Yeah.
Right. When you can sink into just like mastery and really focusing on what you really love and building amazing things out of your unique gifts and your unique brain, and let yourself really be in that creative, deeper work rather than constantly fearing and hustling, which doesn't lead to a satisfying life and doesn't let us do our best work.
So exhausting. And like makes me like get all like tense. And I have one more question for you, but first I just want to share with folks that Linzy and I were together in her home outside of Toronto. Recently, we were taking a walk and we were talking about this, as we do. And I think you, Lynn, said, yeah, I think that we're there. I think and we had been talking about like problems and big business struggles for days. And then all of a sudden we were like, oh, wait a minute. We've arrived. Like, what are we doing? Why are we like still problematizing? Like, we've arrived. We're here. I guess like I want to share that to say that I feel like this is a real dance for us. That's like, there are moments in the dance when we are so clear that like we're in enough and we can breathe and relax and just play and really, find our gifts and explore them. And then there are moments when we're like gripping the table and we're like, oh my God, things are falling apart. Nothing's working, and so I think that it's normal to kind of cycle in and out of perceived scarcity and stability and comfort and enoughness, and that this is what it means to be a very human business owner in this culture. And it's so important that you have friends and you have community where you can really drop in and have these big conversations. I don't think you can do it alone. It's too much to do alone.
No, there's a lot there to unwind and dig into. But yeah, no, I was thinking about that, our conversation as well, where it's like, yeah, no, this is it. Like, we're here. We're here. So, and amazing that we're here and we can dip into those other places. But I almost think of it like titrating. It's like you dip into enough and you're in enough for a bit. And then your brain is like, but problems, but there's problems. And so now it's starting to be curious about like, are the problems really problems? Or how can we solve these problems in like creative, joyful ways, right? How do we align our businesses to let us be in enoughness emotionally more? It's a good place to be.
The work we do with therapy clients, like when they really heal and feel better. And then the work is about like relaxing into, you don't have a problem right now.
Yes.
And the problem is that like, I cannot have a problem. It's the same with money. Yeah. And it's this like relaxing, this really integrating into wholeness. And like, I am good and I am whole and my business is whole and this is enough. And we don't have to strive for anything more or different.
Yeah, it takes us a while to catch up to ourselves. And like, I think about it with the folks that I work with in Money Skills for Therapists who are doing that foundational, the beginning work that we're talking about, where they're like figuring out like, what do I need? And how do I make sure my taxes are covered so that I don't end up like owing, like they're fixing real problems, right? And figuring out how to make money work so that they are secure and stable. And what I often see with folks is they've made a lot of changes and they've made a lot of progress, but they're still back here emotionally where they were 6 months ago being like, but I must be doing it wrong. And like, did I categorize this properly? And it's like, our brain is looking for problems and we haven't caught up to the fact that like, actually things have changed, right? Like you've made new habits, you've changed your systems, you've changed your situation. And I think that's also part of it is like, we spend so much time in anxiety and fear and scarcity and all those things that sometimes when our conditions have changed, it takes a while to be like, oh, but look where I am now. I'm somewhere different. And again, I think that's where presence is so powerful, just to be with your wins, be with your numbers as they are now, be with the progress that you've made can help your whole nervous system catch up to your actual reality.
It takes time.
It takes time.
Yeah. That's a really beautiful reminder. It takes time and exposure. I mean, this is just so parallel to what we do in therapy, right? It's like we need corrective emotional experiences around our safe relationship with money.
Yes.
It could be a whole other very interesting conversation, like looking at our like attachment relationship. Anyways, that's for later. Well, I have one more question. I feel like we've kind of answering it already, but I want it out there explicitly in case you have any other wisdom to share. Because yes, there are many people listening to this conversation who need some of that remedial support, figuring out how do I create a base of financial security in my life through my business. And if that is you, highly recommend that you check out Linzy's Money Skills program because that's exactly the work that you do.
Yes.
And there will be another group of people listening to this conversation who feel like they don't have enough, but actually do have enough.
Yeah.
So I would love to know if you have any parting words for folks who are making enough money, but feel in their nervous systems that it isn't enough.
Yes. I mean, I really firmly believe that living in your values is the antidote to the never-ending more, right? So really taking the time to identify, like, do your values work? Identify, like, what are the top 3 things that matter most to me in my life? And give your attention and give your energy and give your money, if it makes sense, towards those things. I find the more that we are living in alignment with those actual values, right? Like if you have a value of creativity, the more that you make time in your week to do your creative work, whatever that is, whether it's like writing or painting. I had an next door neighbor who was Baha'i. And so she would take Baha'i scripture and put it to music. That was her creative pursuit. Like whatever it is for you, if creativity is your thing, the more time you spend in creativity, the less you're going to be pulled into this, like not enough and the never ending more. If your main value is around like family and being present with your kid, the more that you just spend time just being with your kid and soaking in their beautifulness, the less that you're going to be pulled into this like capitalistic noise. Right. And so if you know that you actually have a lot of money and like actually you should be okay, starting to just live your life aligned with your values gets rid of a lot of that noise and lets you also just see yourself actually investing your time and energy and money into what actually matters to you. And that makes life rich and meaningful. And also just like puts you in a great state where you don't have time to think about all this like hustle nonsense that we get sold. So sink into your values and suddenly that enoughness starts to surface.
That it's so beautiful. It's also just making me think about how when we begin to do this work, when we begin to really align our life and our business with our values, there are often things that we have to release and move away from. And relief is a really important part of this process. There will be relationships that you might have to.
Yes.
There will be visions for the future that you might have to release. Maybe you imagined yourself living in a single family home in the Bay Area. You have to release that if you really want to live in alignment with your values. I just want to add that in here because grief is such a big part of the work that emerges with my clients and with me in my own life. As they're really choosing to opt out of the toxicity of capitalism and opt into a values-aligned life. There are going to be big things that you have to grieve in that process. I also have to say, be really mindful if you know that you have enough and you're doing this work to really rest into the goodness of enoughness, be really mindful about what kind of business communities you are part of.
Yes.
What programs you're in, what kind of mastermind groups you're a part of, what email lists, what newsletters you're on. I cannot be in communities that are really pushing this limitless abundance. It creates so much compare and despair. And it really, like, I'm just imagining it just like, it's like being shoved. And then all of a sudden I feel all wobbly and I'm like trying to gain footing. And I've just found in my own journey that I have to be really careful where I spend my time and what kind of business relationships I invest in. Because if I'm with the wrong people, it's that much harder for me to stay connected to my values and my enoughness.
Absolutely. And I think I've spent several years kind of like wandering into places or having conversations and be like, oh, and then backing out again. You're like, no, this isn't it. And noticing my own goals and having to think, wait, is that actually my goal? Or is that just what I've been told is like, you have to have $1 million business because then you've like hit this threshold. Like, why? But being really mindful of the voices that you expose yourself to, right? And like what ends up becoming noisy. Because I do think it robs us of our happiness and it robs us of our actual success to be around this idea that the only success metric is more. You can't win. You can't win.
And one way to test it, I find, is ask critical questions and see how you are received. Or you like join a program or a community, get on the phone with someone and ask some critical questions. Ask some things on the sales page or the registration page that you question and poke a hole in it and see how you're met. And if you are met with a really rigid response, I personally would not join that community. But if you're met with a leader who's willing to kind of explore that with you and who's willing to like look at things from other angles, that might be a sign that it could be a really helpful place to be for you we're exploring these questions. But
Yeah.
I just want to keep that in because I do think that creating community who are having these conversations is such a crucial part of defining what is enough for you and your business. You can't do this in isolation. It's just too big. So find that community. You have anything else to say, Lindsay?
I don't think so. I just really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I have 27 other things to talk about related to this, but we're not going to do that.
I wasn't taking some notes while we talked.
There will be follow-up dialogue.
There will be follow-up dialogue for sure. Okay. Well, Lindsay, I have one extra bonus question for you.
Okay.
It's a conversation, unsurprisingly, I've had with you before. So part of what I'm doing in my work right now is really exploring all of the ways that our business pays us, other ways than money. Our business pays us in money. Like that's the main thing that it does for us. But I think as business owners, we have the unique opportunity to really generate the kind of revenue that we want in our life that's not connected to. So I would love to know for you, Linz, how does your business pay you in something other than cash?
My business pays me in walks to and from school in the morning. You were here on my son's first day of school, quite serendipitously. And that is so valuable to me. And that's a very conscious choice that I made. And we were talking earlier about a little bit about like having to make choices. I made the choice to not get my son after school care so that I have time with him in the afternoon. And it's really new and it's really fresh and, you know, transitional and bumpy. And I have noticed like having the 2 days a week that I pick him up, having the space in the afternoon to like pick him up from school, wander home, look at all the water fountains along the way because I have a couple neighbors with little water features. So we have to stop and visit every water feature. And then like have the afternoon together before dinner is this like incredible little gift that I didn't know that I needed. Because usually, you know, if I work right up till 5, the day ends and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to eat again. Having that spaciousness now, a couple days a week of like my days to pick up my son and just be like, what do you want to do this afternoon? Oh, what are we going to do for dinner a little later? Is a very valuable paycheck that I'm getting for my business now.
That time is so incredibly precious and special. And you also, you said one more thing on that walk that I mentioned earlier that feels really aligned with this. And correct me, I'm going to butcher the way you said it, but my son only has one childhood.
Yes.
And I want to spend money on it and I want to spend time in it. And I feel like your business is paying you and to be with your son in this one that he has.
Yes. Yes. And it's like, I get to be there for it, knowing that it's short, but also in his one and only childhood, he's going to remember me being there.
I think that's a really beautiful place to wrap up this conversation. Lindsay, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom with us. I'm grateful.
Thanks so much, Meg.
I am so glad you made it to the end of this episode. Now it's time for you to sit down, put your pencil to spreadsheet, and figure out exactly how much money you need to live a deeply rested and joyful life. If you want more support from Lindsay, check out her free on-demand training, How to Make Peace with Money and Thrive in Your Business. This training will empower you to feel calm and in control of your finances. You'll learn how to make peace with money and thrive in your business without burning out, skipping a paycheck, or sleepless nights worrying about debt. You can find the link to this training in the show notes, and be sure to check out Lindsay's podcast, Money Skills for Therapists. Thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you again next week. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Deeply Rested. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to invite you to join the Deeply Rested weekly newsletter. You can sign up at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. I hope to meet you in my inbox very soon.